Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and joining me to my side here is Mr. Brian E. Roach. And Brian, we made it, my friend. We actually are going to have real football to talk about. I could tell you're hyped up. Don't hit anybody with that. You still got the tags on that thing? I know. You know what? It's funny. I usually do not remove the tags from my terrible towels either, but I think the dog got to one of them and like chewed. Like they have like that little plastic whatever on them, but I'm not the one to take the tags off. In fact, my hat still has like the little hologram on here, the new era, the sideline caps. Brian's got the new era. Yeah, no. I like it. You take the price tag off, but I've always been the hologram guy. Oh, I almost took it off right there. I always liked having the hologram on. There's people that leave like that big sticker on the top of the brim here and can't do it. So, how you feeling, man? It's football time. Yeah, well,
I'm glad it's football time.
Clear your throat. Yeah, you look very excited. Let me tell you. I sure hope that your enthusiasm just spills right on over to Steelers Nation this Sunday, 1 o'clock, the newly named Paycor Stadium, formerly Paul Brown Stadium, equally terrible name as the Steelers have been renamed with the kind of obscure sponsor, I would say. I don't know how obscure can you be if you have the millions of dollars to put your business name on the side of a stadium, you know what I mean? But
pretty obscure, apparently.
Yeah, we've got some things and stuff to talk about because it's been a minute since you and I have been on, and we have now confirmed, even though everybody's saying, oh, it was always this way. Well, there's a little bit of speculation as to whether or not Mitchell Trubisky was going to be the starting quarterback. And I've actually been called a homer on the last episode for saying negative things about Mitch Trubisky, and I couldn't figure that one out. I think, isn't that the opposite? And it's not necessarily saying negative. I guess I've been dwelling too much on bringing some of the hype or the enthusiasm other people have, just because, like, I've been burned this way before. Joe Schobert comes to mind last season specifically. Yeah. Like, I was like very hopeful for Joe Schobert, and I'm not to say that Mitch Trubisky will fall in that same category, but most of us had the inkling that he was going to be the starting quarterback week 1, going on the road, division opponent, AFC North game, 2 AFC North games in the first 3 weeks, which can dictate the pace of the entire season right here. And we had kind of a similar layout last season where the Steelers had to go on a road against a Super Bowl favorite, Super Bowl contender within the conference, within the AFC, and they came out of that game smelling like roses. That is, they beat the Buffalo Bills. So our topic of the day du jour is, can the Steelers upset another week 1 favorite when they face the Bengals in Cincinnati on the road this Sunday, Paycor Stadium? I don't know what to say, man. I don't feel as good about this one as I would. Usually I'm in this the beginning of the season. I'm giddy, et cetera, et cetera. How are you feeling about this?
Well, you know, I predicted that the Bengals would sweep them. So it's one of those, how do I feel? Do I feel different now than I did when I tried to project the schedule? And I guess the answer to that question is not really.
For this game, though, right? That's the question I posed Flash just the other day, because now that you have it set that it's Mitchell Trubisky, and we had the last show where we were actually debating, did it matter which quarterback? Does it change like your outlook just seeing the preseason, seeing how the teams kind of come together? I'd say yes to some degree. Like, I feel better about some of the other games. We know Deshaun Watson's not playing week 3. I feel better about the Patriots at home. The Jets, who knows? Could be Zach Wilson, could be Joe Flacco. But this game hasn't like really changed much for me. But as you know, I now live in Southern Ohio. Not quite Cincinnati, but there's enough posers around here that are all of a sudden Bengals fans. And those Bengals fans, they're asking me if I felt that the Steelers had a chance this year or in this particular game on Sunday. And of course they always have a chance.
Absolutely.
We see, last year, Minka was a factor in both of these games. TJ Watt was not. He didn't even play in the home game. And so that makes a whole lot of difference when you're talking about having a defensive player of the year on the field. It all depends on what's going to happen, though, at the quarterback position, because largely we felt that maybe there's some of the camp that felt Ben Roethlisberger maybe over the hill, old. Not to throw you in the same category because I'm the same age as Ben, so now I feel old and I'm catching up to you, my friend. But there's a little bit of truth to that, right? A little bit of truth. Maybe that the Steelers offense could be better with this year. Maybe they get to do more Matt Canada things because it's not Ben Roethlisberger who doesn't want to go under center, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there is certainly the opportunity for the offense to improve. And it will hinge on the same things we've been talking about all preseason on whether the offensive line is improved. If the offensive line is the hot mess that it appeared to be the majority of the preseason, then I don't have a lot of faith that the offense is going to be able to improve. But if the offensive line can gel, if the offensive line can play just serviceable, at a serviceable level. They don't have to be all pros, but if they can just play at a serviceable level so that they can give the skill players the opportunity to make plays, well, yeah, then I think the offense can be better. And that being said, do the Steelers have a chance in this game? Absolutely, they have a chance. They have a chance in every game.
Yeah,
not a question of whether they have a chance, right? I don't see a team out there that they couldn't possibly beat. Oh my gosh, no way in the world could they possibly win this game. They got a chance. Do I think it's likely? All things being equal, probably not. That I don't think they will win this game. But certain things happen. The ball bounces a certain way. Somebody gets slippy fingers. The Bengals turn the ball over a couple times. All of a sudden, that changes the dynamic dramatically. Knock on wood, somebody gets hurt. Not that I'm wishing that on anybody. That can dramatically change the outcome. And we are still at a point where, despite preseason, we don't know what any of these teams, who any of them are yet. And we aren't going to for a couple more games. So, are the Bengals as good as they were last year? I don't know. They could be. They could be better. They could be worse. We'll just have to see. That all those things being said, my gut reaction is this is a tough game for the Steelers to pull off. Doesn't mean it's impossible. Will I have egg on my face if they manage to win this game? No, because it's not like I'm saying they're going to get killed, right? But I'd be maybe that much surprised if they come out of Cincinnati with a victory.
Right, and I think you bring up a very good point here, and that's being, do you feel they were going to get blown out? And the Steelers have lost their last 3 games, one of which was like Ben trying to do the under center stuff with, what was it, Ryan Finley or whoever, during the COVID season where there were hardly anybody in the stands in Cincinnati and stuff like that. And that game really doesn't sit well with me. Getting swept last year doesn't sit well with me. But the beginning of the game last year, you had Joe Burrow didn't look comfortable, but then again, he was at Heinz Field. He was on the road. And the Bengals weren't quite who they were then versus who they ended up being at the end of the season. And they returned a lot of the same players, mostly almost the same entire squad. You had Jesse Bates, who was having his little squabble and wasn't in training camp and things like that. So you'll have to see if some of those things fall into sync. Of course, they have a new starting left guard that's a rookie out of North Dakota. What was his name? I got a Cordell Volson. So that they have a whole new offensive line, and I know they paid a lot of money. They got Ted Karras, they got Alex Kappa, Jonah Williams is out there, Lyle Collins at right tackle now. We're going to have to see if those type of moves end up working out. Like we said, the entire AFC North was dealing with a brand new center. Every single team was making tweaks to their offensive line, and this is still an extension of the preseason, which, as we know, can be sloppy September football. And that's the one reason why it makes me more uncomfortable. I've seen more Mike Tomlin teams Mike Tomlin like gets these teams going and pulls a rabbit out of his hat in November and December, but September, man, is some stinky poo for football. I mean, we had the 11-0 streak that was really nice. They had the 1 year they went out to Washington and just smacked around the Redskins, but that usually isn't the case, and it does. It sucks. Like you got the tie football game that was in a mosh pit up in Cleveland, and just like all the nonsense that's coming off of what Cleveland being their parade for 0-16, I believe. It was the year after that. So a lot of people were upset with that, as though teams can't improve and teams can't like regress to some degree. I sit here and I don't want to be the Debbie Downer. There was actually someone in the comments that's like, I listened to you guys, I trusted you guys, and like they felt like they fell out of trust with us because we just weren't the most excited about like the succession plan at quarterback right away. There's a lot of variables and factors that go into that. And I said, I was sold Mitch Trubisky. I had to be sold on Mitch Trubisky, and I was sold more before I actually got to see some of the play because, I don't know, even in my own mind, like I said, I try not to get too over the hill excited. But again, folks, you got to understand, when Mitch was winning games and making the postseason with the Chicago Bears, they had an elite defense. He had some players around him that were very good skill players, such as Allen Robinson or Tariq Cohen. I'm not trying to say he's not capable. I'm saying he just has to do, if you rely on him to throw 50 passes, you're going to see the same thing that happened against the Detroit Lions with Mason Rudolph, and it's not going to be a victory because you didn't want Mason Rudolph out there throwing 50 passes either. So it doesn't really matter which of these guys you throw out there. Kenny Pickett is a rookie. You want him throwing 50 passes? Somehow, some way, they got to rely on running the football with Najee Harris. See if they get Jalen Warren to spell him a little bit because you don't want Najee dinged or then you're really in trouble. And as Brian had already mentioned, all of this resides on whether or not that offensive line can get going. Can Dan Moore actually play halfway decent? Do you get any stability at the left guard position? Is James Daniels the free agent signing that everyone felt he was going to be? So there's a lot going on, a lot of variables and factors, but when you see everything else that's placed around this team, and we were talking about this going all the way back to last year, or even when the picks were made, like Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, you got George Pickens out, you got Pat Freiermuth, I already mentioned Najee. You have all these skill positions, you've got the dudes around them. So all you need is for Mitch to mitigate and limit his mistakes, and you get a mixed bag. That's all I was trying to show, is that sometimes he's not the most accurate quarterback when relied on to throw more. Sometimes he's gone out there and really superseded and done the job and had a great touchdown to interception ratio. Sometimes he's tried to do some backyard football things and loss of yards, third down, you're punting, fumbles, things of that nature. And we gotten used to seeing that. Maybe with Ben at a certain stage, you're just like, oh geez, Ben, just throw the ball away. How many times do you think we said that over the last like 2 years or so? And you're going to see these same things with Mitch. The thing is that I think folks are thinking of something differently here. Do you have the same type of threshold for giving Mitchell Trubisky a pass versus giving Ben Roethlisberger a pass in the same situations? And I think that answer is no, just because you've got Kenny Pickett sitting waiting in the wings.
I actually don't think it matters who you have waiting in the wings. The answer's still no. Mitch is not Ben. Mitch doesn't have the history with the team, the history with the coach. He doesn't have the track record. So, that, I think it has nothing to do with Kenny Pickett's in the wings. It has to do with Mitch and Mitch alone. Your leash on his ability to maintain the starter is going to be based on how Mitch performs. If Mitch, floats a nice chocolate boat out there, then it's
the old chocolate boat.
Yeah, turd.
Yes, I was gonna say it could be a vanilla turd.
Yeah, if he floats a turd out there, well, whether it was Kenny or whether it was Mason, they're not going to be hesitant to try and move on. Does he have a game? Sure, unless it's so brutally bad, where he's got like 5 picks and some ridiculous set of stats where you simply can't leave him out there because he's just doomed, right? But, he's got a couple games where they're going to say, let's see how this goes. And if it doesn't improve, if it continues to be mediocre or below the line, then they'll make a change. If he goes and is inconsistent, I think he'll earn a little more time. But it's it all boils down to the fact that, this is a guy that's brought in. He was a backup last year. It's not like he has this history of being the greatest quarterback ever in the history of the NFL. Forget the draft pick, legacy of being, this super high draft pick.
Second overall, yeah. I mean, that's a positive. That's a positive to say, but he also was like really just a 1 year college guy too. Mm-hmm. So I get some of the development woes with that, but thrown for 10,000 yards, and that's why I made the comment to equate him to Byron Leftwich, 4-year starter, then goes and he's backing up, I think, in Atlanta for one season, and then he lands with the Steelers still as a backup, but he played some games, That's kind of where I was with Mitch. You got to see if, and I know we're talking about the Bengals, but can the Tiger change their stripes? How much of this was really everything else that was around him? I don't think everything else around him was too bad, but I think what the Steelers also see with that is hey, you put an elite defense behind this guy, and maybe you could win some games and be in postseason contention. Plus, well, go ahead, Brian. I got some more to say on this because I'm like, I think Mitch could do better than what Ben did in the 2 games last year.
I think that's absolutely possible, and you raise a good point about the defense. If the defense can keep them in games, then anything is feasible. But even then, I'm going to go back to it has to be the offensive line, right? Unless the defense and that guy right there, TJ Watt, are going to actually generate points. If the offensive line does not give the skilled players the opportunity to perform, then where are the points going to come from? So it doesn't matter, how dominant the defense could be. If they're on the field 3/4 of the game, it's a problem.
Yeah, most certainly. And one of the funnier things is in the past games where, we've been talking about the Bengals and Steelers, it's always come down to the leg or the foot of Chris Boswell, or we've talked about some of the specialists. And then last year, it was nothing like that. It was
not even close.
Not even close. And it was all on count of, I'm going to run through a little bit of this here and bring up some of the possessions. You had the Steelers, let's see, in the first game was a 24-10 loss at home, and they gave up the ball 3 plays, 9 yards, punt, 3 plays, 3 yards, punt, 3 plays, 2 yards, interception, 8 plays, 11 yards, figure that one out, punt, touchdown drive, 15 plays, 96 yards, and a touchdown. Woohoo! 3 plays, 2 yards, punt, 3 plays, 6 yards, interception, 7 plays for 37 and a missed field goal. Then they made one off of 18 plays and 95 yards. 12 for 73 turnover on downs, and then another turnover on downs late in the game where they couldn't get anything running. And then the second game pretty much it mirrored it a lot, except on the other side of the football was a lot worse because the Bengals went touchdown, field goal, touchdown, touchdown. There was a pick, punt, field goal, touchdown, punt, punt. Pretty good drive charts there. 10 plays, 4-6, 14, 6-5. But they got 71, 75, 78, 45, 65-yard drives, some big drives. There's nothing like this on the other side of the diagram here. 13 for 14 and a pick, 8 for 53 and a field goal, 7 for 28 with a punt, 3 for 9 punt, 1 play, interception. Ben throws a pick, 2 for -9 yards as they end the half, 6 for 17 and a punt, 5 for 27, fumble, 3 for 2, punt, 6 for 43 with a punt, 9 for 69. We like to say that's nice. That did end in a touchdown. Those were some garbage time points. I think that was Freiermuth, by the way, with one of his circus catches in the end zone, and then 7 for 48 as the game closed out and they ran out of time. So it didn't end up in like the best of hands. And just looking at the way the offense rolled in those 2 games, just to kind of, can we say, do you want Mitch Trubisky throwing the ball 58 times? Ben threw it 58 times, 38 of 58 in the first one. That was good for 65.5 completion and 318 yards. We only had 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. They gave up 4 sacks. In the rematch, it was 41 pass attempts, 24 of 41, 58.5, 263, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, 3 sacks given up. And, they picked off Burrow in both of these games. They got to him a couple of times, I believe. Let's see. They didn't get to him at all in the first one. That was the major problem. I think Highsmith was out on that one, too. And I think that's where Jameer Jones came in, and then he was cut like right after that, if I recall correctly. Now he's back with the team. But they got TJ Watt You go. Hopefully, you're going to have a healthy Alex Highsmith. And you were saying, where do the points come from? Hopefully, a healthy Deontay Johnson as well. From all indications, it sounds like he's going to be maybe the guy that ends up. He's on the injury report as we see here with the shoulder, limited practice, and Marcus Allen more than likely a non-factor here overall in the whole game script. But if you don't have Deontay, now you're really relying on how many snaps is George Pickens going to get? How many snaps is Gunnar Olszewski going to get? Is Chase Claypool going to be the top guy? And how do they all fall into sync with Mitchell Trubisky in his first full game of action in well over a year? He didn't play. He didn't start last year. He did play, and I think he threw a pick. I think it was like some ill-advised, whatever. You know, it was like one of those things where he threw downfield. It was something that I haven't even brought up yet, I think, this entire year, because it was just, it doesn't matter. It was just one of those things where he comes in relief duty and took a shot, you know? So that's not to rag on him by any means, but it's just, how do these guys all get on the same page? And you say the same thing about the offensive line versus the Bengals defensive line. They don't have Larry Ogunjobi anymore, who was a big factor in all of that back in these other games. But they do have now his successor that could fill into his shoes as well. And you take a look at that defensive line for the Cincinnati Bengals. You've got Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson coming off of the edge. You got B.J. Hill and DJ Reader playing tackles in the middle. And I think that's more than enough to give them a presence. You've got the linebackers with Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt. I think the weaknesses could be, and I don't really like saying this because I like Jesse Bates. And I've said Jesse Bates could be suspect. He came on real big in the postseason. He's looking to get paid. He's had slow starts himself. And then you also have Dax Hill, who was just drafted by the Bengals and would probably start in Bates' spot. So they got some dudes there. They still have Mike Hilton, who, as a cover guy, he could be beat. You can't tell me that Pat Freiermuth can't take him for his lunch money at any given point. I think that can happen in this game. I strongly believe that Eli Apple is still very suspect as well as far as the corners are concerned. Von Bell is okay. Chidobe Awuzie, fine player. So they were going to match up. This could very well be more of a low-scoring game than we've seen in the last, at least the last one, and maybe even the last two. I'm going to have to pull up some of the numbers and see what some of the bookies think here. But I'm wondering if you're thinking the same thing. It's like, you just got to watch out for Trey Hendrickson. I mean, he really came on. He was a very big surprise to me. I know he was a free agent guy and came over from the Saints, but I wasn't expecting him to jump into the conversation of TJ Watt and Myles Garrett within the AFC North arms race.
Yeah. At full strength, I think the Steelers defense can match up with the Bengals offense, but not if they're on the field, like I said, 3/4 of the game. Eventually, they will wear down. But, you know, mano a mano, as they say, or mano a mano, full strength to full strength, I will take the Steelers defense as a unit that can help to slow that offense down. That's a high caliber offense. With Jamar Chase, it's a high caliber offense. With Joe Mixon coming, look, I don't think Joe Mixon is the back everybody else thinks he is, but he's a solid quality back. You know, and Joe Burrow's just Joe Burrow, right? So you've got a good quarterback, you've got a elite level receiver, you've got solid, capable additional receivers. It's not an offense that has a ton of weaknesses other than their offensive line may be a little suspect yet again, especially with some injuries and whatnot.
Yeah,
but,
and they're new. They got to play together. And Zach Taylor wasn't playing a lot of these guys. He was doing the old Sean McVay, don't play anybody in the preseason, which, I mean, they've had slow starts. They've had fast starts. Who's to say? You can't really say. Again, parity in the NFL.
Yeah, like I said, all things being equal, I'd be happy to see how the Steelers stack up defense to offense. I don't think that's what balances out the game, right? Unless the Bengals do a lot of play some not free football, right? Mistake riddled football that the defense can take advantage of. I don't think that's the deciding factor. The deciding factor is going to be whether the offense can be productive at all. And it doesn't mean they have to score on every drive. It doesn't even mean they have to get, incredibly long drives, but they simply cannot go 3 and out multiple times in a row the way they did in the games last year.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. And just to think what some of the lines are, at least early as we're recording this, the Steelers are a 6.5 point underdog with an over under 44.5. So that's either got to be a very lopsided game or a very close game where both teams are in the 20-ish range, 24, 21, something like that, maybe giving the Steelers offense more credit, or they're giving the Bengals offense way more credit with Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins. I'm with you on the Joe Mixon thing, though, 100% of the way. Like, I respect Joe Mixon, but we've seen him absolutely struggle. And we've seen him, he seems like more of a rhythm guy. And as you get him going, and the Steelers defense, that's something to be said too about these matchups last year, and not having, Stephon Tuitt, Tyson Lulu, and then you're down, and maybe even a Chris Wormley at some point. You're playing like the Davis brothers or Isaiah Buggs or whoever that they were absolutely throwing out there, just any warm body, and couldn't stop the run. So we're hoping that you could bottle that up a little bit more, because that obviously plays into Joe Burrow's the real deal. There's no way around it. He's set records for the Bengals. I had some of those numbers up. Always love being prepared and then not being prepared. You know what I mean? Let me see. He set franchise records for pass yards last year with the Bengals, 4,611 pass yards, and also 34 touchdown passes. Kind of hard to believe with some of the lineage of guys they have. Make fun of Andy Dalton all you want. He had some weapons with like AJ Green and stuff, and Carson Palmer had T.O. and Chad Ochocinco. It's kind of like, and then there's Boomer and Ken Anderson, and here you go. Joe Burrow just set records for the Bengals. It's not like they've had a bunch of schlubs at quarterback over the years. They've just had a lack of success overall. So that's kind of interesting. Of course, I was getting on to some of these numbers and things like that, but I'm looking at it here. Joe Mixon was fourth among running backs with his career high 1,519 yards from scrimmage this past season. And Najee Harris actually led all rookies with 1,667 last season, and he was ranked second with 10 TDs, but he led all running backs with 74 catches. So even if you want to say Mitch is going to dump the ball off, which he has in the past, to like, I've mentioned Tariq Cohen, for example. Jordan Howard caught some balls, but Tariq Cohen was really the gadget player for that type of, like a third down back type. You know what I mean? Scat back type. This will work. It'll work with Najee Harris. I'm not too worried about that. Freiermuth was second among rookies with the 7 receiving touchdowns. He had touchdown catches in both games against the Bengals. That's somebody you're going to have to look at in the red zone. So very, very intriguing type of matchups. But before I get into some more of that, Brian, we have a new sponsor here at the Steel City Underground podcast, and that is No House Advantage. And No House Advantage is changing the game by offering, and I'm going to pull them up here. Here we go. You want to go take a look at No House Advantage? They're offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. Play in pick-up contests versus other people for a shot at winning $150,000 plus in cash. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, earn points for correct picks, and climb the leaderboard for your shot to win big money every day. You could also test your skills versus the house, and 20 times your entry if you hit all of your picks. Bet on up to 5-player prop, over-unders, or individual player matchups across every major sports league, including the NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, your mixed martial arts there, and NASCAR. Sign up now, folks. Head on over there with the promo code SteelCity and at nohouseadvantage.com, or download the app on the various app stores available on iPhones, also on Android platforms, and you could get a first deposit match up to $25. So make sure to check out No House Advantage today. You could see how on their site how they stack up against everyone else. So check them out. Experience daily fantasy sports redefined, because it's not just how you play, but also where you play. You won't want to miss out on this. So very excited to have them aboard. And this is something completely different than what we're used to doing.
I'm sorry. I'm going to No House, and I'm making sure I can be a Rooney.
I don't know, man. You've seen the valuation for some of these NFL teams. I think the Cowboys just came in at like $4 billion with a B. Those are like Dr. Evil figures. Those are like supervillain figures. Like you hold the world hostage kind of money. It's wild. It's wild. I forgot what the Broncos just got sold for, somewhere in the ballpark of something like that as well. And then they paid Russell Wilson. So there's that as well. I know a lot of people are down on the Steelers overall, the outlook throughout the season. This first game, I don't think should change your outlook on what the entire season's going to look like. This first game, you can mark my words on this right now. Week 1, 2022 NFL regular season. The Steelers will look different right now on September 11th than they will when you get to whatever the last game is, like January 7th or 8th or whatever. Now that there's a 18-week schedule, 17 games on the calendar. So it's going to look a heck of a lot different. Could look different at the quarterback position. It could look different all the way around. I mean, it's tough to say. A lot of people are giving other teams a little more benefit of the doubt. So Bengals, do you think, are they the favorite to win this division? I think when we went through initially and we did all three of the teams, I don't think our stance on that really changes. And should they win, they should. Here's the other thing. I was listening to the radio again, as I tend to do, and they were talking about expectations. And we all do it, and we did it for a show. We looked up and down the schedule, and we said, oh, here's a win, here's a loss. And I'm sure teams do it, but you got to get in the mindset you can win every game. And I think the Steelers and I think their staff always has them in a position to at least compete and do that. They will get behind the 8 ball, however, if they drop this first week 1 game, which we think, just based on the way that things are, you have a team that was just in the Super Bowl that returns everybody, and they should be able to just keep that momentum rolling, where you've got some change in Pittsburgh. It's not an entire lot of change, but the most important position has changed, and that might take some time to iron out some of the wrinkles. That means the Bengals could get up with 1 game already in the division, and the Steelers can fall behind and have 1 division loss. So where does that place them in the hierarchy of everyone else when you're talking about the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns? It's going to be interesting to see. I think them and the Ravens may be fighting for a wild card spot, should there still be some scraps left on the table, because all of these other divisions across the conference are just, this isn't the NFC. The NFC is probably going to, there's another one I'd probably put a guarantee on. I think there's going to be at least one NFC team that makes it in with a losing record this year, or very close to it. Could be something like 9-8. That could very well be a possibility. 9-8 ain't going to cut it in the AFC West or the AFC North, and maybe even the AFC East. And we haven't even talked about the South. We're just kind of like ruling out like the Titans or Colts or whatever's going on there. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be a very tough uphill battle for the Steelers to stay in contention, not just because of like their own changes and what they're facing in their division, but also what else is going on in the entire AFC.
Yeah, it is not a non-competitive conference. Let's just put it that way. They will, in order for the Steelers to have an outside chance at making the playoffs, which at this time is truly a premature conversation. 9 wins isn't going to cut it. Just having a winning record isn't going to cut it. You're talking 10 wins, probably a minimum, and maybe even needing to get 11 to have a reasonable chance at making a playoff run. Do I think this team can do that? It's possible. But yeah, they're going to have to gel really well and not to, beat a dead horse or keep sounding the same broken record over and over again, but they're going to go as far as their offensive line can take them.
Yeah. And what else? Who else can take them? We've seen Mike Tomlin perform some absolute magic with champion duck callers and guys who've never even taken a snap in the NFL. And they were an injury away from having even Paxton Lynch out there at one point in the 2019 season. It wasn't even on the roster, wasn't in camp, everything else. We've seen Mike Tomlin get it done with Dennis Dixon and Byron Leftwich and Charlie Batch and Sort of, kind of. Bruce Gronkowski, I think, had 3 snaps in a playoff game, but it still got I believe he converted a third down, and then Ben was able to come back in that game or something like that. But Landry Jones, the list goes on. So a lot of people think that Mike Tomlin's success is always directly tied to either Bill Cowher's team, which we've debunked about a bazillion times. There was like maybe 8 guys out of that 53-man roster that were contributors to Cowher's teams. You got to remember there was 3 years between those Super Bowls, and one of those teams didn't even make the postseason. So we aren't getting into that discussion, but people say these things, you know what I mean? And they say he's mediocre Mike, and he's made the last 2 years in the playoffs. Even though they just squeaked in, they still got there. There's other teams that would kill for that opportunity, and that opportunity still throws your name in the hat at a chance at the Lombardi Trophy when it's all said and done. The question now being, can Mike Tomlin perform the same magic again? And a lot of people think, well, this quarterback bailed him out, this, that, or the other thing. And I think good coaches are still good coaches, and they're going to win regardless. You saw Mike McCarthy, whether he has good or whether he has bad, it didn't work in Green Bay. It didn't look good in Dallas, and I think he's on a hot seat. Pete Carroll, he had Russell Wilson, but they caught fire. They had the Legion of Boom. Let's see what he does there. But Bill Belichick's still getting it done, and he was doing it with Drew Bledsoe, and we know all the plethora of Brady backups, and some of them end up going elsewhere in the league, whether or not they're successful. Jimmy G or Ryan Mallett or somebody like that. Others don't. Rohan Davey, maybe they never get on the field. Who else are we talking about? Jacoby Brissett, back to being the starter too. So yep. Another Belichick guy. So with Mac Jones, they still made the playoffs last year, and they're still trying to do their thing too. So there's something to be said about the stability of the organization, the coaches. This isn't quite a rebuild. I don't believe in that word rebuild. It's not like the Steelers went and hired a whole new coaching staff and a new GM, and now all of a sudden they have like one of the top picks in the draft, and they're just cleaning house on the entire thing. They're just starting from scratch with a whole bunch of new players and, $120 million or something spent in free agency because they've been losing for years and years. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep the pace going. I know everybody hates hearing about has never had under a 500 season, but when you look at the whole landscape, I think the Browns have had enough changeover, and particularly with Jacoby Brissett playing, that there's a question mark, and that's the team that could be in the basement. Can the Steelers get over the Baltimore Ravens? Baltimore Ravens have a bunch of players coming off of injuries, and they had a pretty solid draft, and we're just going to see how all of that ends up shifting out. They've got their own tweaks on the offensive line. They're hoping Ronnie Stanley's healthy and things of that nature. So when you look at the first quarter of this season, yes, this all comes back to the Cincinnati Bengals game, and I realize it's a Cincinnati Bengals preview, but you got to understand that you can't have a knee-jerk reaction no matter what the result of this game ends up being, because I strongly feel that even by the time you get to the Jets game, it might be a little bit of a shaky situation, but I think by the time they get there, they're going to have things a little more settled, and then we're going to be able to see through the month of October really where this team sits, and is that as a first, second, third, or fourth place team in the AFC North.
Yeah, that's not at all an unreasonable or unexpected conclusion. And while certainly there is the opportunity for this team to outperform what we expect, it really will depend on factors that there's no way to determine right this second. As you said, I look back to the season where they had Mason and Duck and were on the verge of the playoffs. They didn't have a great offensive line. They didn't have a great running back. They didn't have a lot, right? And you got Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges starting games. And they almost got in the playoffs. They finished 8-8. Look,
and they didn't plan to play them. They didn't plan to play them. I'm like, this is planned right now. They had time to have these guys get snaps in camp. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I look at this and just think, absolutely, I have a certain level of confidence in Mike Tomlin, but I also have to believe my own eyes, which watched the preseason games and looked at what that offensive line looked like. And a coach can do a lot of things, but he cannot make up for a subpar O-line.
Yeah, so that's going to be my keys. Which guys have to stand up in this game? Who do we need a big game from? Absolutely. Mitch Trubisky, first and foremost, has to be on, I'd say at least his B game, if not his A game. And this is a team, I'm not sure. Like, here's the other thing, and I know Mitch has done it. He's had some fourth quarter rallies, maybe not in the same category as a Ben Roethlisberger or John Elway, all-time great, obviously. But I don't think we can expect to see the Steelers get behind like they did with, let's say, the Minnesota Vikings and be able to turn it right back around and be right back in the game near the end. They can't do that with the Bengals. I think if they do something like that with the Bengals, they're smoked. They're kind of toast. So Mitch Trubisky is one of my picks. I'm gonna say, I'm not sure exactly who I want to put on the spot defensively. I think the Steelers match up very well with their corners, with Cam Sutton, Levi Wallace, Ahkello Witherspoon. I think these dudes can match up with all three of those wide receivers. Then you need Terrell Edmonds to be able to cover whoever's playing at tight end. That was really the only players on the Cincinnati Bengals. The injury report was a bunch of reserve tight ends. So we'll see how that ends up playing out here as we look forward to Sunday. I don't know. Who do you have as maybe some of your guys to highlight? I think we already said Dan Moore. Maybe a big game from Najee. And it's almost like offense. Like, I'm not even like as concerned defensively because I have them at a certain level of, I have an expectation there of where I think they should be playing at.
Yeah, I am. Look, I think the keys to me, and again, same daggone thing I've been saying the whole episode here, is if the offensive line can stand up. If the offensive line can play even just, like I said, legitimately mid-level football, give the quarterback enough time to at least get through his first read, right? Give Najee the chance to make one move, right? Give the skill players some kind of opportunity. If they can move the ball a little bit, I'll be impressed, right? Certainly, look, TJ Watt, all in and of himself, can change a game. Cam can change a game. You've got guys like Minka who can change a game. So the defense can flip this game, but I'm going to come back to my eyeballs, which usually are on the offensive line anyway, are going to be on the offensive line, trying to see if Kevin Dotson can channel his inner mean bully, if the rest of that group can figure out a way to not make pre-snap mistakes, not hold, and actually play like they deserve to be in the NFL.
Yeah, we've got a couple extra storylines to throw in right here at the end. Maybe our 2%ers, not necessarily all pregame stuff. But Brian, how do you feel about Kenny Pickett as the backup versus the clerical error of Mason Rudolph being initially named the number 2? Your favorite guy in the world, Mark Madden, thinks that Mason should be the 2, and I see an argument for it. I'm not necessarily against it, except for the point that QB3 is going to be inactive entirely and not available to go on the field, which is does it benefit Kenny year one, or giving him throwing him a bone if this is like a 40-point blowout and he comes in the fourth quarter, for example?
There's a part of me that says let's let Mason have the backup role.
Yeah.
For no better reason than he is a veteran with some NFL experience. He's started games, he's played credibly well in some of those games. At the same time, do I think he outperformed Kenny in the preseason? No. So if I take all the other nonsense out of the equation, right?
There's
if
a good question
under
for you.
That spec, then he earned the number 2 role over Mason earning the number 2 role. So I don't really have a problem with it. The number 2 quarterback is not breaking this team, so it's really a low priority concern for me.
No, I understand that, but you raised a good question there. Do you think Kenny outperformed Mitch Trubisky? I think maybe they were. My opinion was they were holding off on this announcement to play gamesmanship with the Bengals, nothing further than that. So they just couldn't prepare just for Mitch alone, even though they probably had their own sort of birdie in their ear telling them, their spies, their ears and eyes everywhere telling them that was going to be the case.
Do I think Kenny outperformed Mitch? I can't say that, right?
I know.
I can tell you,
Tough.
I just can't. I can't say I think he did. I can't say I think Mitch outperformed Kenny. Like, I thought it was a toss-up between the two. And I said at the beginning of this, if Kenny absolutely proves he's the starter, blows everybody else out of the water, then he earns the role. But if it's iffy, they're going to go with the veteran guy.
Yeah, perfect. And I mean, that's the same thing. I was like, Mitch didn't do anything wrong to lose his spot. That's something we've consistently said. I hate even addressing some of the comments. It's like some people just, maybe they don't listen to the entire thing. Maybe they don't catch every show. It can't be a broken record on everything. So 2%ers, we appreciate you. Franco Harris having his number retired. The Immaculate Reception. Make sure I get this one right this time. I said, as Zach said, he said the Jesus one. I said the Jesus one the last time, the Immaculate Conception instead. But there was a school. We used to play them all the time. They were on our schedule, when I was in grade school, a Catholic school myself. So that one kind of like that slip happens far too often, more than it should. But Franco, I mean, it doesn't surprise me as the press the press conference was with Art Rooney, and how they were talking about like the timing, the circumstances, everything like that. But man, kind of opens the door where maybe a few more of these, there are jersey numbers that have not been reissued whatsoever. Does this open up Jack Lambert or Terry Bradshaw or somebody else eventually having their number officially immortalized? So just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that too. I think it's really cool given all of the other circumstances, but I think once upon a time we used to do a Mount Rushmore series or shows, and we went through every decade, and then all of a sudden it was like, I don't know if it was coincidence or not, but everyone else started doing that too. Not just Steelers stuff, but it was like everywhere, even movies. Yeah. The Mount Rushmore of Star Wars characters, and Joe Green kind of stands on his own. He's like a Statue of Liberty. He doesn't even go on the Mount Rushmore, so to speak. He's just kind of like as his own, as not only a player, but also part of the personnel and the staff there. So just kind of curious your thoughts on Franco Harris and the jersey retirement.
Look, as much as I don't like to say things like this about the Steelers, because generally speaking, they don't do this. This is the perfect storm of marketing opportunities for them. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The guy who made the Immaculate Reception on the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, getting his jersey retired as only the third player in Steelers history to have his jersey retired. Why wouldn't they do it?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's a bonanza for them.
I know.
My daughter is losing her damn mind over this because Franco is her favorite player of all time. The Immaculate Reception is her favorite play of all time. She will every year on December 24th, she quotes the call of the Immaculate Reception, and she knows it line by line, right? Word for word. And so she's like, oh, I can't wait. This is amazing. This is fantastic. Look, if I was retiring numbers, is Franco the next one I would do? I don't know. You could make the case.
Yeah, sure. Certainly.
You absolutely could. I mean, it's hard off of those 70s teams. And think about it. You got a 53-man roster, right? Which means you got to have at least 53 numbers. So there's only, 46 or 47 more that you can retire. They've got 3. The chances they're going to retire that many more are unlikely. But hell, you can retire another half dozen just from that decade's teams. Then you get up to the point where you got that guy right there. You can retire him come down the road if you want to.
Roethlisberger.
You've got people who absolutely could get their jerseys retired. Troy, that warrant it because they're decade level, once in a lifetime type players for the team. The fact they've got so many, the fact that they haven't done it as a precedence going, back in history is the reason that this is it smells to me of marketing. Somebody in the marketing department went and started whispering in people's ears and said, look, we've got this tremendous chance to cash in on some of the cachet of the Immaculate Reception in this game with the Raiders on the date. Let's do this. And so they did. Do I blame them? No. Does Franco deserve it? Absolutely. But it's just not something they do very often, you know?
No,
So
that's what's so weird about it. Yeah. It took forever
Yeah.
just to get Joe Green in there. I mean,
Yeah, well, I mean, look, you got Ernie Stautner, who was retired, when? Like 1 billion years ago. And then there was nobody for 1 billion years. And then there was Joe Green. And now in like a decade, Franco's next. I'm good with it because Franco has been Mr. Pittsburgh forever. He's been around. He's always there. And if you've ever met him, he's just an awesome guy, right? He's the nicest guy in the world. He is, when you go to signings with Franco, the lines are horrible, not because so many people want, but because Franco takes the time to talk to everybody, right? He doesn't just sign your stuff and let you walk. He's like, hey, I love you. You guys are awesome. It's amazing.
He's like the BMV. You're not going very fast.
Yeah, exactly. It's absolutely warranted. I'll be interested to see what their plan of action is going forward, whether this is a trend that they're going to continue over the next set of years to try and, boost some of the legacy a little bit more. I mean, that was the whole Hall of Honor thing was supposed to essentially take the place of doing things like this.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Because there's only a limited amount of jerseys you could retire.
Correct.
But what are they going to do? 58 and 59? Both those guys deserve it.
Yep.
What are you going to do? So I fully support it. I get it. I think it's a no-brainer to do it now. And I look forward to being at the game and watching the hoopla, although my wife is annoyed because it's on Christmas Eve.
Oh, I know. The whole and I know they get some ratings, and I was just talking to someone. Actually, I'm coaching my daughter's soccer team, and they're originally, I think, from my other coach is from we're both co-coaches, but from Detroit, and used to do the Thanksgiving games all the time. Dad would take the family over to the Lions games, and then mom would stay home and didn't have anybody in the kitchen or in her way, and was able to cook from what I was told. I said, that's kind of neat, but Thanksgiving and Christmas are two different beasts here. So especially when you're dealing with the little ones and having to prep for the next day as well. Two more rapid fire things, Brian. We've got the NFLcom ratings, and I forgot who the schmo was that put this up, but we have Mitchell Trubisky ranked 30th out of 32, just ahead of Davis Mills and Jacoby Brissett. And some of the luminaries ahead of them include Marcus Mariota, which no way. Mariota might even be below Davis Mills if you were to ask me, just based on the number of turnovers and stuff. Joe Flacco is ranked ahead of Trubisky. Geno Smith, Daniel Jones. Okay, Justin Fields, okay, his story's not written yet. I'm okay with not saying anything about him or Trey Lance, Trevor Lawrence, got a bunch of rookies. Baker Mayfield, story might be written on him. Jared Goff, okay, you could put him in maybe that kind of territory. Jameis Winston at 18, Mac Jones at 17.
Who's smoking the Carson Wentz Kool-Aid?
I don't.
Come on.
I don't know. I mean, it's very obvious that they've got Sir Tom Brady at the very top of this list. This was Mark Sessler, and he's got Brady, Aaron Rodgers. Let's see, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, and Patrick Mahomes as his top 5. Joe Burrow just outside of that with Lamar Jackson, Matthew Stafford, who just won a ring, and Dak Prescott and Kyler Murray out of his top 10. And that kind of the Herbert thing kind of falls into the second thing I was going to mention here. And that's that all of these guys, the talking heads on 93.7 The Fan out of Pittsburgh, that would be Pony and I think Mueller, and I forget who else was doing this, all had the Chargers winning the Super Bowl this morning. They have the Chargers and the Bengals in the AFC title game. And the Chargers beating the Rams, who will make it back there. And I'm just like, there are people, I think like Peter Schrager just on Good Morning Football just yesterday or the day before when he was picking caps. We're talking about this with Flash. And the cap, just like this, the New Era sideline cap, got to promote it. Another sponsor. Thank you, New Era. And the New Era 90th season. Very nice that Brian's got on. But just to put a wrap on this show, Peter Schrager wasn't picking up the Chargers cap to even make the postseason. Like, that division's going to be pretty wild to see how those teams are going to shake out, where they're going to shake out. And that'll at least prevent one thing, and that's the Chiefs from being the top seed in the entire AFC conference, because they should all cannibalize each other when it comes to wins and losses and whatnot. So any closing thoughts, my friend? What are we thinking?
I just would like to say that it's been many years where I have noted that the NFL analysts who do those lists, like the one you were showing, probably shouldn't even be using Crayola crayons because they're not good at their jobs. So
Derek Carr, 12, Kirk Cousins, 13. I mean, Ryan Tannehill, 14. That's who I really comp Trubisky closer to, is like a Tannehill. Going to have a ceiling sometimes.
Who wrote that particular one?
Mark Sessler.
Okay, so I equate this to go on the street, find any random individual and say, please give me a list of the top quarterbacks. All of them are going to put Brady at the top, and then the rest of it is going to be a crapshoot.
Yeah. I'm not trying to say that anybody the Steelers have right now would be top 10, but if you can get some top 15, even top 20 play out of whoever is taking the snaps, they've got a legitimate chance to be in this thing. At the end of the season, for sure. I don't know that I agree with a lot of these, and I'm not going to get too far into it, but it's like putting him at 30 I know I've said more negative, and that's because I think the hype has been too much, too great. Oh, he's been ruined, and he's just going to turn around and put on the Superman cape that is the black and gold and with the Steelers logo on it, and he's just going to be this. He's going to live up to be the second overall pick now and put up Brett Favre and Peyton Manning type numbers. And it's just like, just cool your heels. I just want this guy to not be a completely stinky bum, which I've never actually accused him of either. I'm just saying the reason he's not with any of the other teams and he's on his third roster now in 5-6 years now, his sixth season in the NFL, is because of those inconsistent numbers. So just so we get it straight, I'm not defending Trubisky. I'd even put Kenny Pickett up here a little higher. Like Marcus Mariota, to me, I'd even put him under Jacoby Brissett. So, Charles and the rest of the Browns clan that's out there that pays attention to this stuff, if you're a 2%er and you're there and you're listening to it, yes, I don't even think Jacoby Brissett is that far down, like worse. I think Marcus Mariota is just really... He's very turnover prone. And
he hasn't been good to begin with. So
that's what I mean.
Forget the turnovers. He's not a good quarterback in the NFL. So, there's on top of everything else. Look, as I said, I think the majority of these analytical lists that they put together are a joke. They are not based on anything reliable and are just all eye candy and clickbait ways to get people in. Do I think Mitch is the 30th best quarterback in the league? I don't know. Probably not. But I also can see where once you get to about 20, they all sort of stink.
We've always said that. We've always said there aren't 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. We've been very consistent with that. We've been consistent about whether first round picks could be busts. I mean, that could very well, we don't know about Kenny Pickett either, but you got to kind of get him on the field, I think, to find out. And that's where my thing has been with Mitch the entire time. It's like, he's keeping the seat warm. For how long is he keeping the seat warm? We know he's keeping the seat warm. So why is he keeping the seat warm?
All right. So final prediction. Here it is. The bobblehead says, do the Steelers pull off the upset? Yes or no? And the answer is, oh, the bobblehead says yes. Oh, my God. What the hell's wrong with you?
Well, I don't think the bobblehead has brains, so
That's why it's a bobblehead.
It's got that going for him. So, yeah, I predict a close game. I know we were sitting on the losing end of it, and we sound like more Debbie Downers than usual. And for many years we've been accused of just being sunshine and rainbows and blowing smoke up the posterior of the Rooney family and not being realists. And then all of a sudden we come around to being realists, and everybody's like, "Whoa, what's?" But not that we weren't realists before. It was just there was more things to be positive about than negative about. Now we got to take more of a wait and see approach, and I got to wait and see what happens. Certainly in the NFL, it's any given Sunday. Steelers, could they have a chance? I'd like this game better if it was at Acrisure Stadium. I would like their chances a little bit better, but considering this is the first game coming back from a Super Bowl appearance, they're going to be in front of a very hostile environment that's eager to see their Bengals team be the same level of team, be a Super Bowl contender against a team that, ragdolled them for, years on end. There was a period of time where they were competitive back and forth, and we questioned whether or not the Bengals and Steelers were rivals. Then the Steelers ripped off 7 or 8 or 9 wins against Marvin Lewis and even against Zach Taylor early on. And now all of a sudden it's flipped the other way. The script's flipped the other way, and they got to feel confident. There you have a 3-game winning streak against the Steelers. I understand that it's not the same exact team that they're playing this Sunday, but at the same time, the Steelers don't really know who they are. There might be more of an identity with the Bengals, and that's why I would say they deserve to be favored in this game by the bookies. But again, anything can happen. Anything can happen. If they stick up the joint and they just aren't in sync and their timing's all off, maybe that defense feasts. Maybe the Steelers defense feasts and they do just enough, and you still got some stuff coming off of Chris Boswell's foot, regardless of how the Steelers offense should operate. So folks, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget about our promo code Steel City over at No House Advantage. That's nohouseadvantage.com if you want to get in on that first deposit match up to $25. And until next time, take it easy out there. Maybe we'll have one short update if we have any major injury news or anything like that, like a quick hitter. I've been promising that to folks this year instead, because we understand we get this out to get more of the meat in, and then we could fill in the blanks a little bit on what we missed. So it won't delay us, won't delay you. So look for that as well. Perhaps this week we don't have as much news. Deontay Johnson being the biggest one to look out for. Alex Highsmith, we didn't mention, should have the green light and be good to go, was not on the injury report. So that'll do it for us here at the Steel City Underground Podcast. My name is Joe. His name is Brian. Until next time, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.